no reaction when she kissed him, no glance when she brought up their weekend trip. I talked to Wes and my mom and my stepdad and Jake, and I had the best time I had at a family dinner in months. Britt did not like that. She tried harder the next time, told a story about Nico buying her flowers for their 6-month anniversary, and looked right at me when she said he never did that for anyone before. I smiled and said that is sweet, and then turned back to my conversation. She had nothing. The thing about Britt was that the whole act only worked if I was miserable. The second I stopped giving her a reaction, she had to keep escalating to get one, and the escalation made her look worse. At Thanksgiving, she made a comment about how she and Nico were thinking about getting a place together, and said it must be hard for me to hear that since we never made it that far. My stepdad put his fork down and told her that was enough. My mom said she agreed. Jake, who was 15 at the time, said, "Why do you always have to be weird about it?" Britt got upset and said everyone was ganging up on her for being in love. Nico sat there and said nothing the entire time. He never said anything. He was a prop, and everyone could see it. After Thanksgiving, my stepdad told Britt that Nico was not welcome at family events anymore. The first Sunday dinner after Thanksgiving, I showed up to find Britt sitting at the table alone with no Nico next to her for the first time in months, and she kept glancing at his empty chair and sighing loudly, waiting for someone to ask what was wrong, but nobody did. And when I focused on Jake asking about his baseball season, Britt sighed louder until she stood up, claiming she wasn't feeling well, and left early. And it was the most relaxed meal we'd had in almost a year. At my cousin Julian's birthday party, I passed by the kitchen and heard Britt crying to my mom about how unfair it was that she had to hide her relationship because I couldn't handle seeing her happy. And that night, my mom called suggesting family therapy, and my stomach dropped because Britt had reframed the whole thing to make me the problem. So I called mom back the next day and said I wasn't the one who needed therapy for bringing my ex to every family event, and she went quiet with the kind of silence where someone knows you're right but doesn't want to admit it. Jake pulled me aside after dinner a few weeks later and showed me his phone. Text after text from Britt asking if I ever talked about her, if I mentioned Nico, what I said about the whole situation, and he said he'd been leaving her on red because he thought she was being creepy. Christmas dinner. Britt showed up with 3 friends I'd never met and positioned them around the table like chess pieces, then started talking loudly about how hard it was being excluded from family events, how her stepsister was jealous and couldn't handle seeing her happy, how she was in love with someone she couldn't bring home, with actual tears running down her face while her friends comforted her, and half the table watched. And afterwards my aunt pulled me aside, already having decided I was wrong because Britt told her version first and louder and with tears. I left early and spent the rest of Christmas at Melanie's house watching movies and eating takeout, angry and humiliated, but at least not pretending to be okay at a table full of people who thought I was petty. 3 days later, Britt posted paragraphs on social media about family members who can't be happy for other people's joy and people who never grow